teacher, trader, learned so much from this man. And he's going to show a lot of wisdom when it comes to corporate services. But not only that, but what and how it's affecting right now with the business, as we were just talking behind the scenes with tariff and affecting, because Fred has consulted, and Fred, I'll let you kind of go through your background. It's a vast, extensive, and a lot of leaders actually listen and follow and try to get ideas from you because you've been around a long enough time to see many changes in this market, and not just domestically, because you ran a global publicly traded company that helps you get really big grasp of what's happening. So, Fred, if you don't mind just sharing you and your background, and then kind of going into the corporate services and really what we're going to right now.
Sure. Well, good morning, Jim, and good morning, everyone. Just briefly, it's hard to say. I'm 45 years in the business now. So I was saying to somebody the other day, I'm 42. They said, "No, you're 45." I said, "Oh, no." But started in 1980, actually, in a company, spent 22 years at CB Richard Ellis, which most of you know. Back then, it was ironically called Coldwell Banker Commercial. Started off as an industrial broker and then moved into operating three different offices for CBRE, running them, and then was tired of running 53 agents. So I went back into cubes and went into production for myself, became a tenant rep office broker. We'll talk about that in a few seconds either later on corporate services. And then moved into what we call corporate services, multi-market representation of users of space, and did that almost out of necessity. We'll talk about the S&L crisis and everything in a second, because we're in a this disruptive cycle right now as we speak also, and what that means and the opportunities. And then moved to a boutique, left CBRE, went to a boutique firm. I ran one of the first formal teams in all of CBRE, and then moved over to a boutique corporate services firm. We sold that to Johnson Controls, which ended up ultimately ending being part of CBRE. So I went full circle. And then moved over to Realogy, and that's where Jim and I met. Jim was, I think, at the time, the president of the Asian American Real Estate Association. Were you ARIA president then? Or, but anyway, we
Yeah, I
came
think I
across each
was.
other.
I think I was a commercial chair, so I
Yeah,
know it
and
goes
so
further back.
you asked me to come and speak, and
Yes.
so our friendship and relationship started there, and it's evolved in different ways ever since. He gets a lot of free advice from me. He still does. So no, we're good friends and glad to help. And this is my way of giving back to the business and helping out and everything. So, and I left the corporate world in 2018, Realogy and Coldwell Commercial, and set up a consulting practice on corporate services, really on site selection, locational, operational, financial services. And then that's evolved into executive coaching and counseling and succession planning with corporations. Have been on Jim's advisory board for EXP when Jim was there, and then helping out with the Renaissance team now. So that's kind of the long and short of it. So I've been involved in commercial real estate all my life, on local, regional, national, and a global basis in a lot of different areas. So that's about it. So you want me to jump in, Jim, or are you
Yeah, if you don't mind sharing the corporate services, because I know right now you were saying because of the tariffs, maybe you could touch on that
Yeah, I
before you
will.
go into
I'll talk a
presentation.
little bit on the. I'll share my screen. Feel free to interrupt me with any questions. I'm not looking at the Q&A, so but anybody wants to ask a question, feel free to interrupt. It makes for a better dialogue. So bear with me one second, and I hopefully you all can see that, right? So this,
We
can
see
you all see
it.
my
Yes.
screen? Yep. Okay, I'll move that down a little bit. Okay. I just did my introduction. The Renaissance Global, okay, is something you should all be familiar with. And that's the vehicle or the platform that we're delivering the corporate services through in conjunction with EXP. Jim, myself, Jeff Finn, I'm missing some other folks. A lot of us, Jerry Anderson, are founding members, and it's a very good team with a quite extensive background in corporate services, I might add. Jeff and myself, Jeff at NAI and myself at Coldwell Banker Commercial. And prior to that, as I told you, were ran these departments and those operations. And so I'm going to talk a little bit of what corporate services would mean to you and what it means. So let me move to the next slide. What is corporate? And I'll call it occupier services. I think actually occupier is a better description than corporate, because corporate describes only corporations, but occupier can be anybody who's using space, whether it's a small partnership or small business or whatever. And then why corporate services, and then talking about the benefits of that, probably from a personal perspective. So corporate and occupier services, really simply put, is the representation of users and occupiers of space on a multi-market basis. Okay. And multi-market is the key operative word. So most of you are probably dealing with your local clients, and then how do you mushroom that up into multi-market work? And I went into that as a tenant rep office broker. That's how it had started. I was doing 15 to 20 deals a year, pitched a couple of a bank here in New Jersey that became part of First Union. And I didn't know that at the time. And the bank said, well, can you handle our bank branches for us in the greater New York area? It's First Fidelity Bank, which became part of First Union, which ultimately is now Wells Fargo. Okay. So it's when back in those days. And I went from 15 to 20 deals a year to 45 deals to 90 deals to 120 within 100 days. And that's very lucrative. But I can tell you also, um, working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I just couldn't fulfill it. So I had to form a team around me to fulfill and take care of that business that we pitched and won. So that's how I evolved into the team concept. And I always had somebody sourcing the business, converting, and executing. So that's kind of the three steps in the process. But the other thing is, incrementally on each deal, I knew each year I had my costs covered. I like the certainty of the income streams. It's more predictable income than it is in brokerage. You start off your year knowing you have renewals, relocations, new locations, dispositions, acquisitions, and I might add changes opportunity in this business. And when you're going through a negative change right now, which we're going through, I'm not predicting the economy here, but clients are, there's a lot of uncertainty out there. When there's uncertainty, that's a negative connotation, right? So kind of puts people into a stall. There's all these different things that go on. This is when they look to outsource and resource their parts of their business that are non-core to reduce costs. So anyway, that's the opportunity that presents itself. Um, but I like the idea that I could start each year knowing I had my costs covered. I knew I had a predictable revenue streams. And that's why I like that. And I encourage a lot of folks to do that, and repeatable income streams. Growing your revenue beyond your market. And I want to emphasize the last bullet there, which any size client will work. So it depends on where you are in the United States. But if you have a client that's a law firm, engineering firm, whatever they're retailer, certainly retail sector, we had over 88 retail accounts, multi-market work, you can grow beyond your market. So it's just looking at the business. I call it ask the question, right? If you're dealing with a client and they're growing or contracting or both, say, hey, how many other locations do you have? I have 2 or 3 or 4. We can handle those. Or how many do you have around the United States or the Southeastern United States? So it's looking at it from a portfolio perspective and how to grow to help your clients. Now, the good news is you have a team, or you can tap into a team that has done this in numerous ways, shapes, and forms, has extensive experience in that, and can help you to get that business. And then how do you engage with that process? And usually the inevitable question comes up, having been a producing agent for 18 of my 45 years. I was in straight commission sales, so I've sat in your shoes, a lot of your shoes there. Well, what does this cost? What's the payment? So there's really 3 basic ways to do this. I've done it all different ways, by the way. I've done it in the corporate, I've done it in franchise system, I've done it through EXP. So it's real, and my own partnership. So there's really 3 ways. You can refer the business to us. We win the account, or we service the account and pay a fee, a referral fee, typically off the top, off the gross. Or we can share in the business, joint venture, where you run the account and we support, give back office support and do that. Or we support you when you pay the referral fee. So it's one of 3 ways to do this. It's pretty simple, but this is not traditional brokerage as you know it. Also, I'll say that. Okay, this is not it's very team oriented, and it lends itself to that kind of work, and it's expected to do that. But the benefits are really great. So that's kind of the long and short of corporate services, without going into a whole long pitch about it. But I'm going to shift on you a little bit, because I think since April the 2nd, or really since yeah, the last couple of months, we've been in a what I'll call a disruptive cycle. And by the way, this is not a political discussion. This is not anything about for or against. We always play it down the middle, and you have to. But this is more telescoping through you to your clients what they're going through right now. And a disruptive cycle is that. And so, and by the way, I dusted off my COVID playbook. I didn't think I'd have to do it this soon, but so this is kind of relates to the COVID thing, but a couple of quotes here. Winston Churchill once success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. So I think for all of us, psychologically, is persisting, putting your head down and going. That is really key. And this quote from Kennedy is probably apropos too. Is change is the law of life, and those who look only to the past or present are certain to miss the future. So what our jobs are not to look at, you need to understand the history. You need to, because it will inform you, the past will inform you of the future, but you need to look to the future and see what's coming at you and be able to deal with that. Most importantly, not for yourselves psychologically, but also for your clients to try to create certainty in an uncertain moment. That's that's the opportunity that's here. Okay. For all of us as professionals and practitioners. Okay. So, um, so this is the again urgency. This is our experience through past disruptive cycles. You go from urgency, the immediacy of it, the stabilization. What does this mean? And then to recovery. Okay. Now, the way things are changing over the last 30 days and every day and everything else, you're seeing all three of these occur at once sometimes. Okay. So, but businesses right now are in a very urgent, uncertain moment, and that deflects decision making, which is death to a lot of businesses. We could be very quickly moving into what I call a stall here, right? What we call a stall. So a stall is not a good thing, okay? But the stall creates opportunities, and depending on what industry they're in and where they are and everything, certainly if you're uh, handing consumer discretionary goods that are, you go walk into any Walmart or Dollar Tree or whatever else, I'd say three-quarters of the goods sitting on those shelves are from China. Okay. So it's no big secret there and everything else. And so, what does that mean? And how does that mean? And what does it mean to your clients? So, anyway, we were already in a transformation, particularly the retail sector, and then the office sector has been going through a huge transformation in terms of because of COVID, in terms of work from anywhere, work from home, and those elements. So commercial real estate is still manifesting itself in those areas. And then industrial, which has done very well because of e-commerce. The one area, ironically, that's probably been the most stable is the multifamily sector, the apartment sector, and if anything, they've been growing and rents have somewhat, depending where you are in the country, we're reaching a high supply state, but it's still rents are continuing to increase, but they're not the rate of increase. So anyway, all these sectors are going through transformative events that occurred even before COVID and occurred even before the tariffs. So the industry is ever changing. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but basically, we've been through changes like this in the past, with my long history being in the business, going back to the item D, if you see there, that's the S&L crisis, which a lot of you on this phone probably weren't even alive then. But anyway, the S&L crisis, we had I'd say half the office space in the United States, the occupied base or the base that we have now, was built between 1980 and 1990, half of the square footage. And if you look at the stuff that's 45, 50 years old, it's all over the country, suburban office and everything. So when the S&L crisis occurred, we had a 5-year supply of office space and a 3-year supply of industrial space in the United States without building a single square foot more at that moment in time. That's how dire it was, a commercial real estate depression, frankly, when you look back on it. 65% of the agents that were left after that 3-year period in commercial. So there was a big washing out of the agent base that was there overall. But I moved from tenant. I actually moved into brokerage right when the S&L crisis. My timing couldn't have been better. But I moved to the occupier side because clients needed help there, and there was a lot of people working on the landlord side. Representing tenants or anything back then was a totally revolutionary concept, totally new. So I jumped over to the corporate services side and helped clients through mostly getting out of their excess space, renegotiating leases, distressed assets, all that type of work. And that was very lucrative business. I have to say, it was quite a lot of demand for it, and it was very good. 9/11, going up the thing that is divide and delegate, connect and communicate. Not only was 9/11 a disruptive event, but a lot of people forget at that moment in time, that 2 year period, 9/11, you had the Iraqi war, which started up because of 9/11, and then the Enron debacle. So there was a whole huge thing. And then all the legislation that came out as a result of Enron and everything else. So that was a very disruptive time. And being there for your clients, particularly during 9/11, RBC Dane Rauscher, the head of real estate, was dealing with our Minneapolis office when I was in this small boutique corporate services firm. And he called up and said, "Can you guys help me? They need to." I live in the New York area. And so there's trading floors and trading desks all over southern Manhattan and the area. And with the disruption of 9/11, people weren't sure if Manhattan was going to exist anymore. It was that dire a situation. So there were trading floors, backup trading floors all over New Jersey, and RBC needed to be up and running within 11 days of 9/11. They needed to have it. And so they called and said, "Can you help us?" I called, I knew a couple places where they had excess space for trading floors. They're very expensive, by the way. We had them up and running in 11 days time. And did that. We worked 24/7 to get them up and established and going, and everything else, about 20,000 square feet, but it saved them tens of millions of dollars. They offered to pay us, and pay us pretty good money, I might add. And we said, "No, this is for our country, this is for us, and it's for free." And and did it without asking for any business in return. Well, it turns out a year and a half, 2 years later, because he has to come to a meeting in New York City with RBC Dan Rasher, and we were pitching the account. And I walked into the room. I was on part of the team and the pitch team for the business for RBC, and the head guy looks at me, and halfway through, he looks at me and goes, "Where do I know you from?" He goes, I know your name." And so I said, "Well, I think we worked together on the emergency thing." And he looked at me. And so afterwards, we did win the account. And it wasn't because of that. We didn't trade like we did that year and a half, like and whatever else. But he looked and he said afterwards, he goes, "The fact that you guys did me right at that point." So you don't do it gratuitously for anybody, but you help out and you do get business. The financial crisis, pivoting was that truly was a earth-shattering event. I had a whole corporate services team at Realogy. We knew real estate processes, how to deliver service delivery on a platform on multiple markets. And I said to my team, I said, "If this is as bad as it looked, and it looked pretty damn bad at that time, I said, here is how we need to jump over to the REO and REO side of the equation. And we know how to establish a platform, put real estate processes in place, and move clients through a process and deliver that." My team said to me, "Well, Fred, we don't know, we don't know how to do this." And I said, "Nobody else knows how to do it either, but we know how to deliver a process." And so we pivoted over to that, and then it's probably why I became president of Coldwell Banker Commercials, because we were the most profitable group in all of Realogy for a 3 or 4 year period, just handling all the distressed assets for the banks. We handled Fifth Third Bank's portfolio, everything in Fifth Third Bank's distressed asset portfolio, and some of Chase and stuff. So the point I'm making in this, not to talk about myself or whatever. And by the way, COVID was workplace strategy and workforce consulting. So you weren't doing deals, you were learning to do a consulting practice and what to do with their workforce. That's where the need was. And my point is, it's learning to adapt to the changes that your clients are going through. That's the key, and how to make money from that. So, any questions right now? Any thoughts? Okay. So, if there's one slide that's the most important slide in this whole deck, and I'm almost done, by the way, so don't worry, I'm not too much longer. It's this slide right here. And what do your clients want, and what do they need as they're going through a disruptive event like they are? And a lot of your clients will be. They're generally going to be in four, these are my words, but they're probably in four different psychological modes. They may be two or three of them at once going on sometimes, but generally they're in what I'll call in the buying cycle. Like they're, let's go for it, like change is opportunity. We see this right now. We're going to, this disruptive event is going to help us. Okay. So that's one mode. Okay. Another's like, we're not sure, but we'll get through this. We're not sure, but we know we can get through this. And that's another mode. And then the other one is like, We're not sure yet. We're intimidated. We're pained, but we're patient. We'll see what happens. And then the other one is hunkered down, slam on the brakes. This is really bad. Now I'm here to tell you, you need to understand where your client is in that cycle, because you're not going to, if they're the first two, hunkered down or intimidated, you're probably not. In fact, it's going to be counterproductive to try to sell them real estate. In fact, if you give them the happy HS, excuse my words, hey, this is great, let's go for, that kind of thing, that's going to be counterproductive. So you got to see where they are in their buying. And by the way, this is applicable in any kind of market situation, but certainly in this. So you need to see where they are and then try to address their world from their need. This is all obvious stuff, but I think it's important, as much as you're going through the uncertainty, if your clients are, is where are they at, and then that will help inform you on how to provide services that come up with solutions to get them out of where they are. Okay. So you need to be conscious of not being in the selling mode if your clients are in different sites, and you need to find that out and find it out quickly. And I can guarantee you, almost around the country, there are going to be clients in the first two right now. Okay. So you need, and again, I'm not saying you shouldn't sell to them, but you're selling in a different way. Okay. You're looking at it. What can I do to help? Where can I be for you? I have slides on that, but I'm not going to give that right now. So anyway, this is probably the most important slide out of the whole deck. So for where we are, 30, 44, 45 days into this whole situation that the country and the world is in right now. Okay. I'll jump back to corporate service. So enough said on the disruptive cycle and everything else, but I think it's such an important time to address that, to help you all out and to look at things there. So really within Renaissance Global Client Solutions, what we can do to help within EXP and the Renaissance folks, you guys on the call, is how to approach and do markets, work with multi-market teams, tenants, distinguish your needs from real estate needs. That's another thing. How to provide field delivery. So there's one side of this is, okay, you work with a client, you win the account, but then the field delivery is the execution in the local markets approach. So there's two sides to this, right? There's the field delivery. So the Renaissance team, EXP teams that are around the country, when you bring business to them, how should they be conducting their business, and how do you handle that part of the account when you realize there's an account at stake here? So the field delivery component, what we call field delivery, that's the local office. Okay. So if you're dealing with Burger King and they want to be in 10 locations in Southern Florida, then you've got to do 10 Burger King locations. You're working with local people to do those locations. Okay. And then what is expected from them? So that's part of running an account or being involved in this. Okay. What you will learn to apply. We've talked about designations, lease clause checklist, presentation. We have presentation proposals, all different materials. Again, I've been doing this for over 30 years. And at various points in time, I was doing one presentation a week for like an 8-year period there. So, I mean, we have all kinds of materials to help you guys win business on the retail, office, or industrial side of the equation. So, and that's about it. This is within our team, building a delivery mechanism, training each other, training you on how to do it, account development, field delivery, evolving our story, telling our story, and then succeeding. So it's pretty simple what we're looking to do here. The good news is, what I'll say to all of you is ask the question. Okay. That's all. Just ask the question. And let me just jump to the last slide because I want to finish up here. Whatever. So, like I said, I think there's over 100 years of corporate services experience on the team right now. Okay. I know just between Jeff and myself, it's at least 60, 50. And with Jim's a little bit younger. So from that standpoint, but, very good track record and experience. I don't want to act like we can do everything, but a lot of it is to support you to win the business. It's all about winning business. And so I have found throughout my career, it's not winning you generally win by an inch, okay? And it's giving you that extra inch that we're talking about here. So with that being said, I'll jump off and.
Fred, thank you for the presentation. I know, sharing corporate services, very important, right? Instead of just one account or one deal, it's a continuous process of just getting more and more business. But in this time, like you said, maybe people are not doing. How do you balance? Because I know you consult, you help a lot of, high level clients and institutional. How do you do that transition to maybe earn some fees for some advice, some consulting before you plug in, or balance that from the deals that you can do on maybe a commission basis? So how can you kind of balance maybe earning some cash flow, some money while you're helping your clients?
Yeah, I think it's a mindset, first of all. And let's talk about brokerage. It's a great question. We could spend an hour on this, by the way. But it is a mindset in that a lot of brokers don't put a value on their work. Okay. So number one is getting in the mindset of saying, hey, it's not free. Okay. I always hear that for free. In fact, one of the things, and I think it even on the residential side now, they're going through this with buyers, brokers, and all the lawsuits and everything that's happening is like, well, you think about it, the buyer really pays the commission. Yeah, I understand there's an exclusive right to represent or, on the listing side and all that good stuff. But you think about it, there's consideration for the deal that comes from the buying side. So the buyer, so why shouldn't you have a buyer being represented? But anyway, that's another story. But on the commercial side, putting a value on your work, showing what the work is, particularly even if it's only commission based, and saying, okay, here's the number of hours I have to put into this. Here's the work that's involved. And in corporate services, let me tell you, they get to have it down to a sign. Here's the number of transactions we're involved in. Here's what it cost us to my cost. So maybe you pay yourself a salary and say, okay, I'm worth $150,000 a year plus the loads. What are the benefits and everything else? And then this is my cost to break even. And if clients will say, well, I want to do commission sharing, well, here's my cost benefit, here's my P&L around this account before we share commissions or fees. Here's what it costs me to run this account, to do this work for you. So it's getting into that mindset that there's a value to your services. I can promise you, having worked at CBRE and Cushman, or not Cushman, CBRE and a lot of different companies over the years, they all put an hourly rate and they put a cost plus, and then they say, here's what it costs to run these accounts. So it's getting into a mindset. On the consulting side, same thing. It's like looking at an hourly rate, although hourly can get you in trouble sometimes. So there's a whole skill with that. More on a scope of work per project basis. Here's what it's going to cost us, and here's there. Interestingly enough, a lot of agents are very afraid. I shouldn't say afraid, but are hesitant to ask clients for fees. But yet, clients are very used to paying fees for accountants, lawyers, other services. So you got to get in the mindset and say, okay, yeah, here's what it's going to cost me for this scope. Here's what the payment is, because it isn't fee based. Or you can translate it over to fees. That's the really good equation where, okay, if this results in a transaction, then we'll offset our fees with the transaction costs. So it's just getting in a mindset.
Yeah, no, I love that, you've had that large scope, for so long, and putting it and evolving, because, different from residential, and some people are kind of making the move is to put value on what you're doing. And
Well, let me give you an example. And I went through it, and it's an art and a skill at the same time. With COVID, was this really accelerated because we were dealing with a lot of clients that were looking at their occupancy because people were working from home, work from it. They had no idea what their need for space was going to be because they had no idea where their workforce was going to be, right? So you couldn't, it wasn't transactional. There wasn't any way. They just didn't know. So you had to go to them and say, okay, we'll do a workforce strategy. We'll understand your needs. Then what are your occupancy levels what are your space standards for your people when they're working from home? Stuff like that, right? What kind of computer system should they have? What type of using Zoom communication strategies, all those different things. And so that had to be consulting. There was no way around it. It wasn't transactional. And clients were more than willing to pay for that.
and then that's the thing, Fred. I think all of us kind of working together, watching it evolve. Obviously, disruption with EXP, I think you found it very interesting. And it, like you're saying, constantly evolving. You saw when they were only using, I don't even think you had a fax machine when you first started, right? They didn't have computers for
Oh yeah,
sure.
I'll tell you guys a little funny story. I was at CB Richard Ellis, and I was handling Prue Insurance, who's in Newark, New Jersey. It was 20 minutes from where I live. And Prue Insurance, we were working on their occupier portfolio, and they were one of our largest accounts, and I was the account manager. And Prue comes to me and says, we want you to have a fax machine because we're going to send you leases and everything. And so I said, well, we don't have a fax machine in our office. Prue bought me a fax machine. They bought it and put it in the office. Okay. And those weren't cheap back then. And the head of the office, this machine comes in and he sets it up, and the head of the office says to me, he goes, the guy running the office, who was a good friend, and he said, "You can't have this. Like, this is company policy. Like, we don't have fax machines in our office." I said, "Well, you go tell Prue. They just bought it for us, and it's in the office." And the company was so, Jim Didion was the president, COO at the time, was so embarrassed they put a fax machine in every CBRE office in the United States a week later. So anyway, sometimes your clients lead you to where you are, you know. So
And
so
that's the thing, Fred, where right now, with all the changes going on, diversifying your business, plugging into what we're trying to put together with Renaissance, and I know we'll share more, is to allow people to do what they're doing well, collaborate, right? We always hear the word leverage with other experts to make a fee, right? Because there's always that commission compressment fee compression, but your knowledge and your connections and your time is what you got. And how, you put in with other experts, like you were saying, with your knowledge and expertise, so you can make money. They focus on what they need to, but they bring some good accounts that can actually keep them going, keep them alive, help with consulting fees right? Well, you've been around 40 plus years, stay in the game.
yeah,
It
and
doesn't help
underwriting, and I'm glad you brought
if
up
you
the
leave.
fees. They're pretty predictable income streams. On a personal level, that was big to me, because I knew I had my year made, or my cost covered going into the year, which afforded me less stress and less, all the things that go with commission sales, right? And so that was very helpful. If you look at a CBRE or JLL, Cushman and Wakefield, and you go on their quarter, and by the way, I would encourage you to go on their quarterly report. You get a lot of market information and data, what's going on out there. But one of the things they look at, Wall Street looks at, is predictable income streams. Unfortunately, it's not brokerage. That's cyclical. That's not as visible. But corporate services, property management, those are the things they look at to say, okay, what kind of like fire services. So for yourself, as we're our own little P&L for each one of us as individual practitioners. How much predictable income stream do I have coming in over the next year or 2 years, and taking that uncertainty? Now, incrementally, you may make less money on a per deal basis, but I'll submit to you the predictability of that is worth every penny.
And I think that's what everyone needs to understand, how to plug in, how to and this is what I was always sharing, Fred, more than any other time. Remember, before you're just an agent for the company, but this is the first time it's actually flipped, where you now are your own brand. You are your own company and business, and plugging into companies. And then it's just your choice, how you want to split, where you want to be, and all those others. But this is the one time that I've watched, in my time, just how much you can build you. And now with AI, I know it's been thrown around that there's going to be the one-person billion-dollar company, because with AI now, you can literally assemble and put every component together. And I mean, it is just really, amazing, fascinating, scary, but exciting all at the same time. I mean, so just kind of advice of how could people plug in? Because maybe people that haven't worked on corporate services or occupier services or large accounts, how could they just even get started? I know you maybe share
Yeah,
a little.
and that's why I put that one slide up there. That it kind of like you tend to think when, if you haven't done it before, it sounds intimidating, but even if it's a client with 2, 3, 4, 5 locations, do that, or 10 locations or whatever. It doesn't have to be a huge account, or it could be a portion of an account, whatever else. So that's number one. Number two, that's part of why we're on this call, is to help you, give you advice to say, okay, you're going after this piece of business. How do you assess it? You look at the way you look at the portfolio. When I say portfolio, is the client's assets and liabilities in their real estate portfolios, understanding their strategies. I always found that the fascinating part of the business, and that's what I loved so much, was working with clients, and you see the strategy at headquarters, and then you see the local offices, and the real estate's a manifestation of the strategy and how that gets implemented, and you're part of that process. So you just jump in. It's like a lot of things. Just go for it. Look at it. You're not going to know everything, but say, okay, I can help you in this 5 or 6 other markets here. And I might add, if you have a client or an account, and if it's not I always say to every client and any company I work for the local knowledge, I said I'm going to work with the best qualified real estate professional there is. So if an EXP person, and nobody's perfect in any scenario, any group, and so if our person's not qualified in that market, we'll go to somebody who is qualified that's outside the brand or whatever. Okay, so that's the other part of that too. So
Eric, I just want you to kind of chime in because you have the account and the connections and relationship with the one that's trying to scale, remote business. That really, if you don't mind sharing to Fred, kind of as a case study we can all learn from, maybe sharing that client, that individual, trying to scale their business because they do have some multiple locations for that remote working. If you don't mind sharing Thrive.
Jim, are you speaking to me? You're saying
Eric,
I'm not sure which client you're speaking of. I apologize.
no, the remote working with Thrive. Remember the remote working space.
Oh, yes, I do apologize. I was trying to track. Yeah, so I really appreciate Fred. I sent you an invite on LinkedIn while you were talking, so we can get some one-on-one and your insight on building those relationships and trying to navigate the uncertainty and create some certainty. So thank you for sharing that with us, and hopefully the slides can be given to us as well. In this space, Thrive Co-working, presidents Chris Smith and Ramon Gonzalez. They're now in, Jim, I think they're in 6 or 7 states, 21 locations. Their model brings a working environment for someone to, have their office, but in a really unbelievable atmosphere that walks right out onto the busiest streets within any community where a lot of things are taking place. So to the group here, if you know of anybody who has a co-working environment already up and running, this particular group is interested in meeting with those operators and bringing their atmosphere to that location. So it could be an opportunity for those on this call to participate. I would say do a canvas of your area, look and see who the co-operators are who are creating these workspaces. See if you can create a contact and see if they might be interested in having probably the premier co-working environment in the country right now. What Thrive has done, they are getting more per desk, per dollar than anybody else in the industry. And there's a reason why they're doing it. So if you'd like to hear more about that, want to follow up with me, please feel free to do so.
Yeah, so Fred, this is something, right? Scaling, looking, turning, systematizing, right? Through occupiers corporate services of what you put together. If you don't mind sharing, because they do have tech and some secret sauce. So Fred, your thoughts.
well, a couple things,
Can I
Eric.
can I jump right back in real quick, Fred?
Sure.
To add to that, this group, they really create atmosphere. So even when they were up at the CCC event in New York, and they were with the organization that had the building, even though they do co-working, they can create other atmospheres in other buildings. So some of your tenants or organizations you're working with may have the need for such services to enhance their facility, to enhance their atmosphere, to create the right working environment, no matter who they are. It doesn't have to be a co-working environment. And I apologize for interrupting, but I wanted to add that.
No, I just wanted to, if you're going to reach out to me, please contact me either through my Outlook or my cell phone there if you want to text me or whatever. The LinkedIn, for some reason, I'm not on it as much as I should be or whatever else. But if you want to, probably the quickest, easiest way to get to me is through those mediums. I apologize for that. No, to your point about co-working though, and the environment, and it's borne out in New York City again. The Class A, the high-end space is moving. Interesting is that B and C, functionally and economically obsolete space, that is having issues, and the co-working certainly here to stay, and having a solution for that and creating a great work environment for your people and those elements is a key thing. I'd be curious to hear more about that. Yeah, it's very interesting, so.
And that's the thing, Fred, why I brought it up with Eric. Some people don't realize it's corporate service. like you think it's large accounts, publicly traded, but they don't know. Maybe it's 2 or 3 restaurants, right? They need to understand how to, make it official, to turn it into a franchise, to scale the operations, to, pay for a business development or just leverage right through networks and relationships, of how to scale. Right. So maybe you could share some of the industries that you've seen, maybe start smaller. Not, we all know the corporate large account.
And that's why I spent the time on those slides on the disruption going on right now. Companies go, and by the way, whether it's good or bad, in fact, I find I've made more money in my career on not the bad side, but companies going through market-driven change that is not good for them because they're the ones that need help and need it quickly. Now you got to make sure they can pay you. Okay, there's that part of it too. So you got to underwrite them a little bit and understand that. But generally speaking, that's where the need is. That element is there. So I would suspect there is and I'm just listening to a lot of podcasts and things on this. There's a boatload of small businesses that are impacted. Anybody that's dealing with uh, consumer discretionary goods, okay, and we're talking about anything that they're distributing through their retail locations and elements, they're in trouble, or there's trouble coming, right? There's something nobody knows where this is going to end up, but there's a lot of disruption to their businesses. And so those businesses, and that's a boatload of them that are small to medium-sized businesses in your markets that are distributing goods, are going to be disrupted. Okay. I hate to say it that way. I'm not being gloom and doom here, but so that's an opportunity. And I can't walk in and say, oh man, I got a great, you got to be careful. You got to be very empathetic. And that's why I was saying what mode they're in psychologically is very important. But that's where you see those kinds of opportunities or whatever. And then what happens with the real estate? Okay, now retail has always been, there's been a lot of bankruptcies, a lot of consolidation. Walgreens and CVS is closing down in different parts. So that's part of the normal retail landscape. I suspect that's going to accelerate to some extent because of what's happening here. So it really is a local market type of phenomenon, but looking at that elements of that, okay. Warehousing and distribution for importers and exporters, if you're in the industrial markets where you have those gateway markets, those are places that you're going to see a lot of dislocation and disruption also. Okay. So
Fred, kind of going on that, I just got a call yesterday to talk about pharmacies, right? Because of all their changes, with many of the kind of like the Walmart, Rite Aids, right? They're all closing down because other technology, like Amazon stuff, are starting to come into the pharmacies. And we all knew pharmacy was what drive traffic, right? To get your medicine, just like some of the C stores in gas stations, right? They all wanted to encompass it. But now that technology with Amazon and others coming into the pharmaceutical industry, the pharmacy industry direct, right? Now they don't have the foot traffic that helped, and there's just oversupply, right, of some of those large shopping grocery stores. Now the pharmacies are gone. But other groups are trying to buy their list to change the model, right? Because like you said, there's always change, even like it or not. It's inevitable, but there's opportunities.
and so what does that mean in terms of real estate? Again, it's a local market, so I don't want to act like it's, one wand and you go around the country and say it's X or Y or Z. That'd be presumptuous on my part, but there's definitely the point I'm making, I guess, or we're making, is that change they're going through as a manifestation, and it's understanding what that means for your clients and where they're going with that and how to help them in that regard. And that's why I was giving examples in the past of like looking at workplace strategies in COVID when you were going through all that. And you brought up a good point. We were talking about this right before we jumped on. Reshoring in the United States, or North America, I should say, was going on very strongly before the tariffs. So, and I think ironically, that's getting disrupted now, but there was a lot of mission critical products and things coming back. Pharmaceuticals is a big one, right? The raw compounds that go into the pharmaceutical process. Okay. So that was happening. Now, retraining the workforce to be able to handle blue collar work and do those things, that's another part of this. That's that hasn't been thought of yet, but we did a consolidation for a client where manufacturer that consolidated out of China. This is the last go around, and built 1 million square feet in Reno, Nevada, and the workforce was dictating the location characteristics of the client. But they're a facility that probably 10, 20 years ago would have had 10,000 employees. It's about 1,000 employees right now. Okay, because of the processing, robotics, and all that type of stuff. So it's a whole different world, even in manufacturing, in terms of how, and the workforce has to be highly trained. So, you know.
Before I ask more questions, I want to open it up still for others, maybe Nelson or Max, April. I'm just looking at who may have other questions, because this is very interesting about how to plug in, how to be consulted, because I know Nelson with your ESG companies and other businesses, who you're running in. I know maybe, well, not to get political, right? Changes of different government, but we are going to more efficiencies, right? In technology for energy and renewables, right? We don't want to damage our world, but there's a lot. So Max, I don't know if you or Nelson or anyone else has a question.
No, I don't. I've been listening to Fred for the last year, I believe, and he'd been very, very gracious and, gave me the right answers. And thank God for that. I appreciate you.
Glad to help in any way. And you're like I said, your client is telescoping through you to your clients right now. They're dealing with like I said, those 4 areas. Their chances are they're pretty good in one of those 4 areas. In any selling, by the way, you're where are you in your resolution of resolution of concerns? What are my needs? And then I'm ready to buy, right? And everything. So I just bought a car. It's funny, I just went through it again 2 weeks ago. I just bought a car, and got rid of my Range Rover, which I liked it, but I would never get another one. But that's another story. But I walked into a dealership with my wife and everything, and the salesman, he was 30. You could tell he had done it for many years. We were ready to buy. I didn't need to know what was underneath. We already did all our research. And by the way, and everything. So we went in ready to buy. Now, if he was trying to sell me, like tell me, oh, this car does this. It was a Lexus, by the way. We had a good history with Lexus cars and everything. So we're buying a Lexus. And we knew what we wanted. He didn't need to pitch us. In fact, it would have been counterproductive, right? We were ready to buy, and he knew it. And he said, here's the car, here's the keys, let's jump in and ride around. And then we came back. So we were in that buy mode, and he read it right away. But a lot of salespeople, and afterwards, he and I talked, I said, I've been in sales all my life, and I always studied the psychology of selling and where clients are in terms of their modes. And you read us right away. He goes, yeah, I've been doing this for somebody. I knew right away, you guys. He goes, the car sells itself. I didn't need to sell it. He goes, you guys already had a Lexus. He asked 2 questions, right? Are you, what, yes, like, have you had a Lexus before? Yes, we did. Boom. He didn't even have to sell the car, right? He knew. He said, okay, the Lexus experience. Let's get in the car and everything else. And do you want to lease or buy? Like those 2 questions. That was it, So sometimes we forget, we get in such a pitch mode that you're going to make the pitch that the client's already ready to buy. So, and I'm hitting this hard right now because chances are your clients are not going to be in the buy mode or in the pitch mode right now. They're going to be in a resolution of concerns, and you're coming in with solutions and being there for them. It's probably more important now than selling them something. I hate to say it that way, but it's the truth based on my experience in going through these cycles. But it'll pay off for you. It'll pay off big time. So
Nelson, you had a question?
More of a comment, I guess. I feel that we're at a highest level of transparency due to AI and information being at the tenant or buyer's fingertips if they knew what to look for. But they're pretty much overwhelmed. So they need to rely on an expert advisor or a team of expert advisors that can help navigate the challenges ahead in every area. So I've always felt like EXP has the potential and a lot of talent to be able to help companies navigate those problems. I've been seeking to try and be a solution and basically sustainability, resiliency, and risk mitigation, and help us see the areas where they can take their current performance, improve their net operating income, or improve their operations for their employees and get higher productivity in the right spaces and the right environmental conditions. And so I think there's an opportunity to offer those services within corporate services. I'm open to discussing some of the solutions that we can overlay.
You bring up a great point, and I think it's a couple of points. One is AI. I would encourage all of you to, you don't need to be an apostle for AI, but to incorporate, I use it in my everyday work, and I've always been open to new technologies, new thoughts, new systems. I can tell you, I have a lot of existing content, and just using that to edit and transcribe and it's just unbelievable what it can do. And I think and I'm a neophyte in it. I don't want to act like I'm an expert in AI, but I encourage you to utilize it. You do need to personalize the stuff. I would not create an email and just send it out for me. You can tell if it's AI generated, so you got to kind of edit. But 80% of the what would take me an hour to compose something from my materials takes me 30 seconds now, and then I just I make it my voice, right, which is always important. But the essence of it is very very much there. In terms of sustainability and environmental, it certainly is like the pendulum swings back and forth, as we're all literally seeing it going, but it's here to stay. I think, Nelson, you bring up a good point, and that's something just like we do, a cost benefit ratio, right? How can I save money, or what is the cost benefit, and how to measure that is something that I think, and maybe that's a turn for the better for sustainability in the long run. It's like, okay, you can drive savings and energy efficiencies and these elements by doing this, and here's your cost benefit ratio, which I always think was missing, my personal opinion, on sustainability measures. And people were pitching that, but they were saying, well, it's good for society, and don't get me wrong, it all is, and you want to have that, but how to measure that. So I think we're kind of moving to the middle, which is probably the place to be, in terms
Well,
of
there are tools that are available to measure and describe current performance on a particular property that's really can be insightful. And then the triple bottom line benefits, planet, people, profit benefits that we can actually show a net present value for the investment, which is usually a lot higher than just the financial benefit alone.
Yeah. So I think, that working through those elements, getting the approval processes streamlined, all that's extremely important, but you bring something unique to the table that you don't have, and people are very conscious of it. Even if they don't say it or espouse it, it's something that's there. And so it has to be addressed,
Eric, did you have something to add? Oh, you're muted. Oh, maybe April for now. April, go ahead.
I do. Hopefully you all can hear me. I have laryngitis, so I'm going to reach out to Fred directly outside of here for more information on getting plugged in and connected. But since you all were speaking about AI, for those of you who are near Atlanta on May the 16th, we're going to be, the Georgia CCIM chapter is hosting a CE, it's a 5-hour course. It's going to be site to do business with an AI component added to it. And so that's going to be on May the 16th from 9 until 3 p.m. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you,
Thank you,
April.
April. And I just wanted to say I've been through during my career, it's probably one of the biggest supporters of CCIM in the industry. When I was a coal maker commercial, I think we had 600-700 people matriculating or through. I mean, just always loved CCIM. Your site to do business is, I would say that to anybody who's not a CCIM, even if you want to subscribe to that, phenomenal tool. They have the mapping software and everything, and just that alone is worth it. I used that software for a site selection for this 1 million square footer. We were going to do it ourselves, and we went to Site to Do Business and subscribed to it, and you could spend millions of dollars doing the work that it just did. It was very efficient and really good. And I'm glad to hear CCIM is embracing the AI component. That makes a lot of sense for CCIM. So, and here's the thing though, I can do right now through AI, I can throw in a bunch of numbers and say, give me a discounted cash flow analysis. And today's dollars, give me the present value of that. AI does that right now. Okay. So, I mean, that's not an amorphous thing that's out there, but you still need to know the math behind it, which is what CCIM brings to the table. But those like throwing that into the but checking the numbers, right? You have to check the assumptions as you got. Again, I'm preaching to the choir for the CCIMs. Validating the assumptions is always the key, right? So you all know that already. So I feel the head shaking, but but I can do a discounted cash flow analysis. I can just pull up a program and done, and that blows me away. It's like, oh my goodness, I could do math here. So just incredible. But that's great. Thank you for doing it. Laying down the law. I don't want even to ask you about that part of it, but anyway.
Yeah.
I'll share that with you when I can talk.
Yes, feel free. I'm
There
glad.
is
By the way, I'm open.
there is a story
Obviously,
behind it.
glad to speak to any of you, help you in any way, shape, or form, and assist you in any way. I'm at a point in my life where I give back and help out, and doing that, I feel very fortunate in that regard. So, for an industry that's been very good to me, I might add. So,
Fred, I just want to thank you again for the service you're giving, mentoring so many people in this industry, and continue to give back. No, it is a privilege, honor, to get to know you now as friends and still pick your mind and advice for free. Thank you so much, and ask you to
no,
speak.
it's all right. But it's profitable experience. It's been mutually beneficial. I'm teasing you on that. You know that. So
I know, but thank you.
Yeah.
And giving back to so many others. And I know you're generous with your time with new agents, even experienced, but a lot of new agents. So again, Fred, thank you for joining Top Agent Nation Commercial Wednesdays.
My
And
pleasure,
thank you
everybody.
everyone for joining us. And reach out to
Thanks,
Fred.
Jim. Thanks, Fred.
Thank you. Feel free to reach out. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
See you,
Thank
Jim.
you. Bye.
Bye.